MOXO test results are comprised of two reports, an attentive cognitive report and a behavioral report. The first report shows the patient's attentive profile compared to his or her norm group. The norm group is determined by age and gender. In this report, you can view the examinee type, criteria table, severity table, and the legend. Let's begin with the criteria table. For each index, the norm group's data is used to calculate a z-score, which is then categorized into one of 4 performance levels. The first level is highlighted in bright green and indicates high above average performance. The second level is highlighted in olive green and indicates standard, slightly below average performance. Level 3 is highlighted in yellow and indicates weak performance within the low norm range. Level 4 is highlighted in red and indicates difficulty in performance that deviates from the norm range. Note that the z-scores themselves appear within the corresponding square. This profile, for example, represents an individual who displayed high performance in the attention index, standard performance in the timing index, weak performance in the impulsiveness index, and deviated from the norm range in the hyperactivity index. Now take a look at the severity table. The severity table will specify the level of severity only for indices in which performance was found to deviate from the norm range. The 4 severity levels are also defined by z-score ranges. The higher the severity level, the more the patient deviated from the score calculated for the norm group. In this criteria table, for example, the hyperactivity index was the only one that deviated from the norm range, and therefore a severity level will be indicated for this index only. In this case, the severity level was level 4, within the most severe range. The severity table is useful for comparing performances between 2 or more indices that deviate from the norm. In this profile, performance is below the norm range in both the hyperactivity and attention indices. But you can see that performance in the attention index deviates from the norm to a more extreme degree than the hyperactivity index. This indicates that inattention is a more severe problem for this patient than hyperactivity, and the treatment should be planned accordingly. The examinee type is a summary of the patient's profile. The first letter of each index appears A, T, I, H, followed by a digit from 1 to 4 that indicates performance level in that index. If the performance level is 4, a severity level will also be specified by adding an S followed by a severity level from 1 to 4. Please note that definition of each index and the various performance levels appear in the legend at the right on the screen. The second section of the test results is a behavioral report presented by a performance graph that specifies the patient's performance throughout the test. The x-axis is the timeline and is divided into 8 levels. Levels Basic 1 and Basic 2 are identical and do not include any distractors at all. Levels Visual 1 and 2 contain visual distractors. Levels Audio 1 and 2 include auditory distractors. Finally, levels Combo 1 and 2 contain combined distractors, that is, both auditory and visual. The difference between the 2 levels in each pair is the degree of distractions incorporated. The first level in each pair contains a low distractor load, while the second level contains a high load. The y-axis contains scores for each level that range from 0 to 100. For all indices, the higher the grade, the better the performance. Note that each index is marked with a different colored graph. Attention appears in blue, timing in green, impulsiveness in red, and hyperactivity in yellow. For example, in this graph, the patient's attention score is 100 in the Basic 1 level, meaning that the patient correctly identified all of the targets in this level. You can also see that the hyperactivity score for the Audio 2 level is 100 as well, indicating that no hyperactive commission were recorded in this level. What kind of information can be derived from this graph? There are 2 ways of evaluating performance: over time and under different conditions. Compare the scores in the 2 identical levels, Level 1 and Level 8, in order to test performance over time. Comparing these grades gives an indication of the patient's ability to maintain performance over time. In this graph, for example, you can see that performance in the attention index improves over time. Another example shows a decrease in performance over time in the hyperactivity index. To evaluate performance under different conditions, compare the patient's score in the levels with distractors with the score on the basic 1 level, the baseline level. This should be done for each distractor type separately. In this example, you can see that performance in the timing index improved when auditory distractors were present, since both auditory scores are higher than the baseline level score. On the other hand, here we can see a decrease in performance when visual distractors were present, since the scores in both visual levels were lower than the score for the basic 1 level. The performance graph can be used as a guideline for helping your patients optimize their daily routines by avoiding certain types of distractions, taking breaks during extended learning periods, etc. To summarize, the MOXO test results can give you, the professional clinician, the attentive, cognitive, and behavioral data necessary to create a comprehensive and clear picture of your patient's attentive capabilities. Watch the video about the Attentive Developmental Report to learn about the third type of report available.